Imagine you're looking out your apartment window like any other day, the distant high-rises glowing with familiar lights. But today, in just a few minutes, the entire skyline in front of you turns into a wall of fire. The bamboo scaffolding wrapped around the tower suddenly erupts like a giant fuse, encircling the homes of thousands of Hong Kong residents. And it all begins from a small fire on the outside of the building on an afternoon that seemed totally ordinary. You're watching global weather disasters, where we don't just talk about storms, floods, or record-breaking heat waves, but also dissect disasters that explode right in the heart of our cities, where tens of thousands of people share the same vertical space in skyscrapers. In today's video, we'll revisit the devastating fire at the Wang Fuk Court housing complex in Tai Po, Hong Kong, from the timeline of events and the conditions that fueled the flames, to the human cost and the lessons for anyone living in a high-rise. This is not just Hong Kong's story. It's a reminder that the feeling of being safe within four walls can sometimes be far more fragile than we think. It's a Wednesday afternoon in Tai Po. Life at Wang Fuk Court goes on as usual, with 31-story blocks wrapped in green mesh and bamboo scaffolding as part of a long-running renovation project. Around 2:50 p.m., a small plume of smoke appears on the scaffolding of one of the towers. At first, many residents assume it's just smoke from construction work. But with wind funneling along the façade, dry bamboo and flammable exterior materials act like perfect fuel. The flames intensify rapidly, racing up the scaffolding like a giant torch and then jumping to the neighboring towers. Window glass shatters under the heat, smoke and fire close in on the apartments, and residents say that within just a few minutes, smoke had already poured into their living rooms and bedrooms. Inside, not everyone hears a fire alarm. Many people are jolted awake or alerted by frantic banging on doors, panicked shouting in the corridor. When they open their doors, they're hit immediately by a wall of black smoke, stinging eyes and burning lungs. Elevators fail or open directly onto smoke-filled floors. Stairwells, in theory the main escape route, are pitch dark, scorching, and packed with fumes, turning any attempt to escape into a deadly gamble. Elderly residents, children, and people with limited mobility are trapped in their flats, while down below, fire engines and ambulances flood the streets, roads are blocked off, and the blaze paints the Tai Po night sky bright orange. The Wang Fuk Court fire was not just a random blaze that happened to be fanned by wind. It was the result of multiple layers of risk stacked around an old housing complex under renovation. Bamboo scaffolding wrapped tightly around the facades, combined with plastic mesh and flammable insulation or cladding, turned the exterior shell of the buildings into a continuous, combustible surface from bottom to top. Once the fire took hold, wind along the towers pulled the flames straight upward and then sideways into neighboring blocks, leaving several buildings engulfed at the same time and making it extremely hard for firefighters to cut off the fire front. During the renovation, many windows and ventilation gaps were covered or sealed with temporary materials to block dust and noise. This unintentionally trapped heat and smoke inside, turning some flats into ovens in a very short time. At the same time, suspected delays or failures in the fire alarm system meant residents did not receive a clear and timely warning, losing the golden window to evacuate in an orderly way. Add to that the high density of residents in an aging cluster of towers, the complexity of oversight during major construction, and unanswered questions about who is truly responsible for safety, and you have a setting where a single spark can escalate into an unprecedented catastrophe. When the last columns of smoke finally begin to fade, Hong Kong is left with a wound that goes far beyond scorched concrete. Hundreds of Wong Fuk Court residents are forced to leave their homes, with only a few hastily grabbed belongings, sleeping on plastic chairs and camp beds in schools, community centers, or relatives' homes. Many elderly people sit silently for hours, clutching their phones, waiting for a call from family members or an update about their building. Children ask when they can go home, while the adults themselves don't know whether their old flats are still habitable, or even still there. Streets around Tai Po are gridlocked, some schools temporarily close, and both online and offline, the atmosphere is heavy with shock and anger. People ask why a housing estate under renovation could be wrapped in such combustible materials, why the fire alarm system failed to warn them in time, and why residents were left to live for months inside a scaffolding shell without adequate safety measures. Messages of condolence and promises of investigations are issued, but for families who have lost loved ones, no words can truly compensate. What they hope for most is that, from now on, their lives and the lives of their neighbors will actually be protected better in the place they call home. The Wong Fuk Court fire is a powerful reminder to every city filled with tower blocks. We can't only talk about floor area, height, and price tags while ignoring the most basic question: how safe is this building when something goes wrong? High-rise estates under renovation must be scrutinized more carefully. What materials are used on the facade, how scaffolding is wrapped, what the plan is if a fire breaks out while the building is covered. Scaffolding, mesh, and temporary cladding cannot be treated as minor details. Fire alarms, PA systems, and emergency lighting must be properly maintained and tested, and residents need to know what they mean and how to respond, instead of them being paper compliance for inspection files only. For individual residents in Hong Kong, in Vietnam, or anywhere else, knowing your escape route from your flat to the ground floor, paying attention to the condition of your front door, keeping simple items like a towel, tape, and a small flashlight ready, and speaking up when you see exits blocked or stairwells cluttered are all small actions that can make a huge difference in a life or death moment. The disaster in Hong Kong is an irreplaceable loss for hundreds of families, but if cities change how they think about high-rise safety, and if each person living in an apartment tower becomes more proactive about their own safety, then at the very least, what happened in Tai Po will not become a tragedy that repeats itself somewhere else.